Former CIA Russia analyst Chief George Beebe is joining us now to talk more on Russia's invasion. Chief analyst, I should say. George, thanks for being with us. And let's pick up where we just left off in this battle for Donbass that is shaping up, especially the Ukrainians' request for heavy weaponry. Our Louis Martinez reports that in this package that the president has announced, he was struck by the fact that there are a lot more artillery is going to Ukraine. 72 more 150-millimeter howitzers, in addition to the 18 that had already been announced. So what does that tell you about the battle as Ukrainians see it, their request, what they're needing, and how the battle of Donbass, the decisive battle it seems like at this point, is shaping up?
Well, this is a different type of warfare than we've seen in the first part of this war. The Russians attempted in phase one to attack Ukraine along three different fronts, from the north, from the east, and from the south. And they believed that they wouldn't face a lot of resistance in so doing, so they didn't concentrate their forces. And part of this really focused on urban warfare, what we've seen in Kiev, what we're seeing in Mariupol. Urban warfare is different than large tank battles on open plains, which is really what we're looking at in phase two of this war. The Russians are now concentrating their assault in one direction, in the east. That's where the bulk of the Ukrainian military is positioned. And this is going to involve tanks and armor, artillery, missile strikes, air attacks. These are things where the Russians have some significant advantages over Ukraine. They have a lot of firepower to bring to bear. And so the real question here is, can the Ukrainian military get enough of the kind of ammunition and weaponry that it needs to fight this kind of battle against the Russians in this next phase of the war? And right now we'll have to see how that goes.
And they proved themselves, the Ukrainian forces, very skillful, very spirited, very adept in a kind of hit-and-run fighting that they were doing, especially in the north and around Kyiv. But let's talk about what happens on the Russian side of the equation in the Kremlin. If the Russian invasion of Ukraine doesn't go forward as Vladimir Putin has wanted it to. Look, he seems to be pressing on the gas here. He says, people say he's looking to the May 9th Victory Day celebrations that are very important in Russia. He wants to tell his people, we have a victory in Ukraine. They're a long way from that. They got the hat handed to them outside of Kyiv. What are the chances, first, that Putin decides out of frustration or military necessity to attack Western supply chains, perhaps even in Poland and NATO countries, and then this loose talk about nukes, about missiles that you hear coming from the Kremlin and from Kremlin-sponsored media? How much of a concern is that stuff for you?
Well, I think the chances of escalation here really do depend on Russia's fortunes on the battlefield. If they're able to make some progress quickly or significantly, the temptation to resort to escalatory strikes in any fashion is going to be less than it might be otherwise. If the Russians bog down and it looks like the Ukrainians are really delivering them a significant blow in this next phase of the war, then I think the Russians become much more tempted to retaliate. For now, I think their strikes on Western military supplies to Ukraine are likely to be inside Ukrainian territory. And there's a simple reason for that. We're supplying those weapons through the western regions of Ukraine. They've got to be brought from that western region over to Ukraine's east, either on roads or on rails. And they've got to cross the Dnieper River in order to get to those front lines. That provides some attractive targets for the Russians. They should know where these supplies are going to be and have opportunities to strike against them. I think that's where they're going to start. But if they grow frustrated, then yes, I think they could attack supply depots in NATO countries themselves, They did that back in 2014 when this war first started in the Czech Republic. So they've shown the will to do that sort of thing despite the risks. Now, in terms of nuclear escalation, that for right now I don't think is particularly likely, but in that I don't think the Russians would intentionally resort to the use of nuclear weapons under the circumstances they now face. But we could get into a situation where the Russians, if they feel cornered, if they feel like they're facing an utter defeat and humiliation, and that the future that they could look forward to includes regime change in Russia or the breakup of the Russian Federation in some way, under those circumstances, they might be willing to escalate in some way, probably not directly to nuclear weapons, but cyber attacks, other attacks on the United States infrastructure that would send some messages to the United States to back off on all of this. And that kind of escalation might become difficult to control over time.
Absolutely. You make a good point. Putin has raised the stakes or pushed all his chips to the center of the table. He talks about it in existential terms about the destiny of Russia, and that does raise the risks for escalation. George Beebe, thanks very much for being with us.